Rashod Bateman balled out at Baltimore Ravens practice on Monday. We talk about that. Lamar Jackson hate rearing its ugly head once again, and so much more coming up next year on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much, as always, for being here, making Locked On Ravens your first listen each and every day and a part of your day in general, free and available for you on all podcasting platforms. So in audio form, if you're an Apple Podcast listener, Spotify listener, wherever you get your podcast, we have you covered. And if you are a video watcher on YouTube, you can hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You're not missing out either way. If you watch in video form, listen in audio form, it's the same content both ways, 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. The Ravens kicked off another week of practice, again ahead of their Week 3 preseason finale against the Green Bay Packers. Joint practice, obviously, is on the horizon for this team, and it looks like, again, they're trying to get their ducks in a row with everything. That is roster construction, that is guys getting on the same page with others, and we certainly got that in practice on Monday. On today's show, we're going to be talking about Rashod Bateman balling out at practice on Monday, establishing that connection even further with Lamar Jackson, something that everybody, especially myself, we've been definitely rooting on that and hoping for it. So we'll talk about that in the first part of the show and just Bateman's importance to the offense in general. Then we'll move into just general practice notes, talk about some other things that happened over the course of the day on Monday. And then finally, we did have some Lamar Jackson controversy news. Julian Edelman took a shot at Lamar. Nick Wright left him off a list in blasphemous fashion, and 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks gave him some praise. So both some bad and some good in the final part of the show. But let's start off with Rashod Bateman. The biggest story of practice on Monday was Bateman catching a 65-yard deep shot from Lamar Jackson. That was the big part. It was about 60 yards, and Bateman also, according to accounts, had multiple other great catches, multiple other moments. But this pass, this 65-yard touchdown, was during 11s, so 11 on 11. Jackson heaved, according to Ryan Mink here, who does a great job, obviously covering the Ravens, being a part over there at BaltimoreRavens.com. This was a 65-yard touchdown down the right sideline. Rashod Bateman caught it right in stride over Kadar Holman. And as Ryan notes here, they need those two to be able to get on the same page, not only just in general, but the deep passing game for the Ravens last season was pretty inconsistent. Lamar was not great as a deep ball passer last year. I think that was one of the weaknesses in his game. And again, I do want to preface the conversation about Lamar's deep ball by saying it is not all on Lamar, because obviously there were some drops by wide receivers, some miscalculations, miscommunications that weren't all on Lamar. But statistically, Lamar was a fine deep ball passer over the earlier parts of his career. He wasn't the best deep ball guy in the league, but it was a respectable number. But last year, and even a little bit 2 years ago, and to an extent, it has dipped. So for Bateman, we know that he's a 3-level receiver. We've seen him go out there and catch long touchdowns, take short passes, and turn those into long touchdowns. But in terms of airing the ball out, the deep passing game, it is going to be so imperative. Obviously, Lamar has to get on the same page with everybody, but the connection, because we know that Rashod Bateman and Lamar don't have the same connection as Mark Andrews and Lamar do. Even as Zay Flowers and Lamar do. And Zay's only been in the league for a year, and I feel like his connection with Lamar is better than Rashod Bateman's. And that is obviously due to the health factor. Bateman has been in and out of practice, missing time. Lamar obviously missed some time with the illness to start off training camp. So that was tough because, again, it was kind of the theme. They weren't able to get on the same page, weren't able to get chemistry. But now with Bateman being back, Lamar obviously being in full swing too, that part is really, really important, because now that they're not playing like absence tag where, it's almost like phone tag where you call somebody and then they miss your call, they call you back, and then, you miss theirs, you go back and forth, back and forth. Well, it feels like, or at least it felt like, Lamar missed time early, and then Bateman missed time, and then obviously Lamar didn't miss any more time, but then Bateman is missing more time, Bateman is missing more time. So I think now that they are hopefully on the field for the long run, it's going to be really, really important for them to just continue that, be able to get on the same page, learn each other's nuances, learn where, for Lamar, where he wants to place the ball, for Bateman, where he needs to go. There are so many little things that can contribute to this. And we see it with Mark Andrews all the time, where he and Lamar play street ball together, where they have it down. Bateman's super talented. The Ravens have shown every ounce of belief in him this offseason. And I mean, that's what they should do, but it is a little bit of a risk, just in terms of, yes, Bateman has not been Bateman's not been the guy that's been on the field and reliable, I guess, for Lamar over the course of his career, which is unfortunate because of the talent. But I mean, again, there is still plenty of time for Rashad to kind of right the ship here. But again, it wasn't just a 65-yard touchdown. There were a couple of other plays where Rashod Bateman was able to connect with Lamar. And it's about stacking at this point, right? Because you're going up against solid players. Like, obviously, is Kadar Holman going to make this team? Probably not. But in general, going up against Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens, Nate Wiggins, that secondary that also includes Kyle Hamilton and others, I mean, that's about as good of a test as you can have. So when Rashod Bateman goes out there and he's playing against corners that aren't as good as Marlon, aren't as good as Brandon Stevens and all that, he's able to use his ability. His route running, I mean, Rashod is far removed from college, right? I'm not saying, oh, go look at the college tape. Go look at the No, we have enough on Rashod Bateman at the NFL level to kind of, I guess identify is what I'm trying to say. Identify where the strengths and weaknesses are in Bateman's game. Sure, college can play a part in that in terms of he did this well and he didn't, but we're in year 4 for Rashod Bateman, right? Even though the injuries have been persistent and they've been really a big part of his career, we can sit here and say, yes, this part of Bateman's game needs work, this part doesn't. But Bateman is a really good route runner. He's able to get open, him being able to use the middle of the field in that short and intermediate game. And I think why one of the more disappointing parts here about the training camp and how it's gone has been Tez Walker, because I thought he was going to be someone to maybe take some deep ball pressure off of Rashod Bateman, which, again, that's not saying Bateman can't do it, not saying Zay can't do it or anything, but I thought that his role could be a little more refined. But now that Lamar and Bateman are at least starting to strike up more of a connection, and by the way, this is not the first time that these two have been able to connect and be on the same page and establish that over the course of this training camp. There have been multiple days where the two have been able to connect. And, not every day is that. It's obviously a learning process, but isn't that with everybody? For a fourth-year guy, obviously there's less of a connection than you would have liked to see or that you would have hoped for. But I think part of it's a confidence thing as well, where you want to get Bateman's confidence to the level, to the utmost level, all the way up here. And look, if he can put it all together for a season, he has the potential to break out and just take the NFL by storm. But he has had 3 injuries so far, at least 3. He's had to leave 3 times during training camp with little minor things. He's been able to come back. But if he has to miss a couple of weeks here, because that's kind of what did him in last year, is he had to miss a couple of weeks at the beginning of the year, or at least towards the beginning part of the year, and he and Lamar never really were able to recover a bunch of that connection. Plus, the big thing here, and if you're an everydayer and you've listened to me here, you know that I've said this over and over again, the Ravens do have to make it an effort to get him the ball more, to throw the ball more, to be able to let him establish a rhythm with targets, because he's been in that range of he'll get 2 to 4, maybe 5 on a good day targets. That's not enough consistently for a season for a player, especially one who is still trying to get his confidence up, still trying to establish himself. That is not enough targets to be able to get much of any rhythm, any momentum. And while guys like Zay are getting 8 targets, Mark's getting 8 to 10 targets, right? And you should be throwing targets their way. I'm sure Isaiah Like is going to see an uptick. Bateman has to see an uptick as well. Part of that does include throwing the ball more, 100%. So it's great to hear that Bateman balled out on Monday at practice. Certainly much needed, and hopefully, again, he can continue that momentum into the season because they are going to need him in such a big way against the Chiefs in week 1, and of course, moving forward for the rest of the regular season. Coming up in the second part of the show, we're going to be diving more into general practice notes, who else performed well, and what else happened. So be sure to stay tuned. We got a lot to get to here on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and I love FanDuel, going on and checking what they have to offer. It is great. We have something a little different for you now. Through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. So for football season, the Ravens and Chiefs open up the season on September 5th, Thursday Night Football. The Ravens open that game over on FanDuel at 2.5-point underdog. So if you like that line, you want to check out that line, go over to FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and download America's #1 sportsbook. We've returned to our second segment here of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Tuesday edition of the show. A little Taco Tuesday episode for you here. Really appreciate everybody again for tuning in today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. Be sure to make your second listen Locked On NFL. I host that show over on Mondays. So for all of your NFL coverage generally, yesterday on Locked On NFL, we talked about the Falcons' big additions. We talked a lot about other topics as well. So be sure to tune into that part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And be sure to tune in here on Locked On Ravens for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. We go live after every single Ravens game, live after every single piece of Ravens big news. We'll have game day episodes coming out on Sunday mornings on the Ravens Play on Sunday for those. So we have a bunch of content, plus obviously regularly scheduled 5-day-a-week Ravens episodes Monday through Friday. Tell a friend, tell a family member if they are looking for some Ravens coverage daily. We have them covered here on Locked On Ravens. Now, let's talk about some practice notes for the Ravens. We did talk about Rashod Bateman and how he was able to perform and how he was able to play in practice. But generally, we saw some other guys step up. But the thing that I did want to start with is Lamar Jackson. He had a great day throwing the ball, obviously with Rashod Bateman, as we talked about, but had a couple of nice throws to Isaiah Likely. And also, he had a couple of other plays where he looked really good. He threw a really great ball to Likely. Jess Rebeck of The Athletic says here on one-on-ones. So he had one of the prettiest balls of the summer, Jeff said, also on that Bateman throw. So everybody's talking about that Bateman throw. But Lamar Jackson did leave practice with a trainer for about 10 minutes here after sitting on the ground behind the rest of the team. He returned without an issue, said he's good, he's wonderful. Apparently, he was flexing the ankle a little bit. Maybe he got that ankle taped. I'm not sure. But he obviously returned and did his thing. So on the panic meter, I'm probably about a 1 with that. Like, obviously, he was good enough to come out and practice. So probably a little very, very minor thing with whatever that was. But look, Jackson himself said he's good. He's ready to go. He's wonderful. So I'll take Lamar's word for it with that. But then you have Nate Wiggins. He had a really nice interception where he stepped in front of the pass from Devin Leary that was intended for Kadir Ismail, and he had an interception on that. And he also had a couple of one-on-one reps against Isaiah Likely. And although he was blanketing Likely on a play, Likely still was able to come down with a catch. And then another play, again, very tight coverage, but Jackson and Likely were on the same page, and that ball was able to get right through the spot where it needed to, and it was another completion. So not for a lack of trying from Nate Wiggins, but again, it's something that we're going to have to monitor with him because he is a good player. But the other thing we got to monitor is that Lamar Jackson to Isaiah Likely connection. Here, Nick Semek, he is competing for a spot on the Ravens roster. He was a draft pick of the Ravens this season. He had some first-team reps on the offensive line, and Ben Cleveland was getting some reps at right guard, something we've talked about on this show. We've said, well, if Daniel Falele, what's it going to be? Falele has not been bad in terms of like every snap has been bad. Obviously, it's been inconsistent, I would say. But Ben Cleveland has been getting some work there apparently now. So we will see how that plays out. And again, this all coming from Ryan Mink over at BaltimoreRavens.com, who does a great job over there. Lamar Jackson did have an interception, though, on a ball that he threw to Keith Kirkwood. Pepe Williams was able to jump in front of that ball, and he was able to intercept the pass. Odafe Owe had an incredible practice. 2 sacks here, according to Ryan, on three plays near the end of practice. Roger Rosengarten was the guy who struggled with that. So Rosengarten, not a great end of practice, which is unfortunate, but great news. Odafe Owe has been getting absolutely incredible reviews coming out of training camp and has been one of the stars of Baltimore's offseason program, which is exactly what they need out of that position. Kyle Hamilton and Owen Wright, a couple of big collisions for those two guys. Apparently, he tossed Owen Wright on the ground at the end of a completion. He popped pads alongside inside linebacker Trenton Simpson as well. So, just Owen Wright being a physical beast. He, again, in my opinion, is the front runner for that number 3 running back spot before Keaton Mitchell comes back. And then Marcus Williams apparently ran a long way and broke up a pass to Zay Flowers during 7-on-7. So a lot of positives. Players who returned to practice for the Ravens on Monday: Russell Gage, Sanusi Kane, Chris Board, and Christian Matthew. Kane obviously suffered the stinger in the Ravens' first preseason game against the Eagles. Chris Board suffered a concussion in that same game, and also good to see Gage and Matthew back on the field. Players who were still not practicing with the Ravens: Arthur Millette, Rasheen Ali, Eddie Jackson, a new one, Adiza Isaac, Josh Ross, Tyler Linderbaum, Josh Duopo, Devontae Walker, Scotty Washington, who John Harbaugh later said broke his hand, and Mark Andrews. So there was an update on Linderbaum. Harbaugh said that he is on schedule. He is working through everything. He's taken part in team walkthroughs. So obviously Harbaugh said he'd be back last week, about 2 weeks ago, but he's back doing certain things. So they have no concern. Seems like the timeline is, they've indicated it's still week 1. So we're going to see. Harbaugh said that Mark Andrews has a very minor thing. He'll be okay. I don't know if that's related to the car accident or not, but Harbaugh did say that Andrews will be okay. And then, as I mentioned, Scotty Washington did break his hand in a special teams rep during Saturday's game. So it's probably IR for him, if not, injury settlement type of deal with that. I think that another big thing for the Ravens is just trying to figure out some of their roster spots, obviously. And these training camp battles with a lot of guys, one of the things that, and I've been saying this for a while, but one of the things about this Ravens team is it's constructed is there aren't a lot of roster spots up for grabs. So, you hear about some of these guys doing really well and making a name for themselves, which certainly that is a big thing. And guys can fight for roster spots on this team. Guys can earn roster spots. I'm not saying they can't. But, you have 6 wide receivers fighting for what might be one spot. You have maybe 3 or 4 offensive linemen fighting for what might be one spot. You have three outside linebackers fighting for what might be one spot. I think for a lot of these guys who are on the edge of the roster, you're looking at practice squad. Now, that's not to say that a couple of guys can't surprise you and make this team. I think that Dayton Wade is making a heck of a case for himself. I think Bo Braid is making a heck of a case for himself. A couple other guys are in that conversation. Don't get me wrong. But there are only so many roster spots to go around. I would assume that Baltimore has a couple of players taken off of waivers once cut down day happens, which is pretty natural for them. That's not necessarily a new thing. But it's a good problem to have, but it is always tough when you lose talent. So we're not there yet right now, but they have found a lot of young players, a lot of gems that are competing. But for a veteran team, there does have to be a conversation, one, about what you want your roster to look like, and 2, do you want a bunch of vets on the practice squad? Do you want a bunch of young guys on the practice squad? What does that look like for you? So a lot of interesting conversations about the Ravens because, yes, it's about roster spots, but it's also about competitions with the offensive line, as we've talked about, with, for example, the backup quarterback position, as we talked about. Even a battle within the battle as Emory Jones, Devin Leary, right? Are those two competing for a spot? We don't know. We know Eric DeCosta is not a guy that will latch on to draft picks and keep him on the roster for 2 or 3 years. Like we've talked about with Rasheen Ali, with him still not being back practicing, do they stash him on IR? Is this the thing where they understand Owen Wright makes this team and he needs to make this team, but Rasheen Ali wouldn't pass through waivers? And so do they say he has a little thing right now, he's going on IR, and that's going to be that? Interesting. I mean, look, plenty of interesting discussions ahead, but overall felt like another good day of Ravens practice. A lot of guys getting reps and a lot of guys making plays. Coming up the final part of the show, we'll talk about the Lamar Jackson conversation that was all over the internet, social media, wherever. It was everywhere on Monday, talking about what Julian Edelman had to say, what Nick Wright had to say, and of course, 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks in Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. Stay tuned. Got a lot to get to here on Locked On Ravens. We're back. Our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you here on this Tuesday. Really appreciate everybody again for being here for the support on the show, on the channel. I really do appreciate it. We are, the time of this recording, right about to hit 7,500 subscribers, 3/4 of the way to the first big goal I set out on this show, which is 10,000 subscribers. Once I hit 10,000, you know those Dixie cups with like the green and the purple, the design there on my first ever episode of doing video, or maybe it was my second, I can't remember. I said that I would wear a full Dixie cup outfit for a full week once we hit 10,000. So, man, it's been incredible, the support, obviously in video form, but also, obviously, we started this in audio form. That was our first venture, which is still going strong. The audio community is awesome. So be sure to subscribe, follow along video form and audio form for 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage, and tell a friend, tell a family member. We are here for them as well. Well, we know that there's certainly a lot of Lamar Jackson conversation that happens every single year, seemingly around the clock, full calendar year. Lamar Jackson is on everybody's minds, and his name is on everybody's tongue, it feels like. And that is certainly the case, as Julian Edelman, a former NFL wide receiver, obviously plenty of accolades to his name, was on Fox and talked about the Chiefs. Is he picking the Chiefs at 3-peat? He essentially said that he was, and talked about how the NFL, they need somebody to step up, stop Kansas City. Is that Joe Burrow? And then he mentioned Lamar Jackson. And what he said about Lamar Jackson here is Lamar Jackson, who's been on a milk carton in the playoffs, he's missing. This to me felt unnecessary. Like, I understand Lamar, his playoff record is not good. His playoff stats are not good. Generally, when we're talking about Lamar Jackson's playoff production, it is lacking based off of the player that we all know he is, the talent that he is, and the expectations that are placed upon his shoulders. We can all sit here and acknowledge that Lamar needs to be better in the playoffs. But we also can't sit here and say, what happens? Do we just wipe Lamar Jackson's Texans game off the face of the earth? I get that he hasn't made a Super Bowl. I get that the stats aren't there. That he is sometimes shrunk in the moment when he's been needed most. But it's not like he's been objectively awful every single game. Like his offenses haven't scored points. That is a fact. But are we pinning all of this on Lamar? That's kind of what happens, and that is the natural train of thought when you're talking about which player on the offense deserves the most blame. It all goes back to the quarterback, right? That's seemingly all that happens is you talk about who gets the blame. The quarterback is the one that is front and center. But we don't hear this conversation about Josh Allen, his stats are better than Lamar's in the playoffs. He's won more games in the playoffs than Lamar. I'm not disputing those facts. But Josh Allen hasn't made a Super Bowl last I checked. If you lose in the playoffs your season, it's not the goal, right? Your goal is not to get to the AFC Championship game and then lose. Of course, it's not for the Ravens, but Josh Allen hasn't made a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow did make the Super Bowl, and that is an accomplishment in itself, and I think should be acknowledged as such. But Joe Burrow hasn't won a Super Bowl, right? These guys, when you talk about Lamar Jackson, it feels like his failures, his mistakes are magnified beyond everybody else's. And he deserves criticism when it's due. He does. He's not this guy who is just immune to all criticism. But when he does great, and there's plenty of praise to go around for Lamar, it feels like some of the narratives that we hear about other quarterbacks do not apply for Lamar. And then some of the negative narratives that we hear about Lamar don't apply to other quarterbacks. And this has been years and years, even dating back to Louisville, and people were telling him, is this guy a wide receiver? What's going on? It's been that. So people that feels like are waiting to jump on an opportunity or jump on a statistic or a performance where Lamar was bad or didn't have his best game. But football is also a team sport. And to pin every single Ravens playoff failure, every single moment of every single Ravens playoff failure on Lamar Jackson only is not fair. because we know the coaching staff has been an issue at times. We know that other factors have been an issue and that it's not all on Lamar. Where, yes, Lamar deserves blame. He does deserve criticism for it. I'm not sitting here and trying to defend his playoffs. He needs to be better there, and I think a lot of people know it. But he has had good games. He's had great games. Again, that Texans game, he was electric. He was incredible. But obviously in the playoffs, it doesn't matter if you have one great game and then lose. Everybody's going to focus on the loss because that means your season is over and you didn't achieve your goal. The Ravens, in order for at least some of this noise to die down, is for Lamar to win a Super Bowl. And that's what it's going to be. I mean, and that, again, you talk about Joe Burrow, oh, he made the Super Bowl, but he didn't win it. It feels like if that same thing happens with Lamar, if Lamar makes the Super Bowl next year but does not win, the conversation around Burrow was, oh, darn, like he made it, but that's a great accomplishment. It feels like for Lamar, everybody's going to be like, okay, well, not good enough. It was a failure. Cool, but, close but no cigar, essentially. And that's just kind of the way that this conversation crumbles with Lamar Jackson. And I'd be fine if, we were having, oh, this guy's bad in the playoffs, that guy's bad in the playoffs, and that was the energy for most everybody, or we can at least objectively say, well, this went wrong or that went wrong, and it's not all on the quarterback. But it seems like a lot of people don't have that conversation about Lamar. It's, oh, well, they look at the base playoff stats, the base playoff record, which is still not good, and should not be necessarily defended. But at the same time, I do defend Lamar in the fact that he's a guy that doesn't deserve all the blame, certainly deserves criticism, but there is more to the story, and it's not like every single playoff game of his has been bad. When it has mattered, it sometimes has not been great. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, oh, well, Lamar Jackson just deserves all of this criticism and every single piece of it. That's not the conversation we should be having. We should be objectively able to sit here and say Lamar Jackson needs to be better in the playoffs, but so do a lot of other quarterbacks, because the goal for teams is Super Bowls. And if your name is not Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady over these last 20 years, you're probably not winning a lot of Super Bowls. And luckily, Baltimore is able to get one. But objectively, we're not sitting here and, there are conversations about everybody, but it just feels like, again, Lamar gets his name put front and center and say, hey, let's go talk about this guy negatively because of this, and that. So that's kind of where I am on that. And speaking of Nick Wright, who is certainly not a favorite of Lamar Jackson, and Nick Wright certainly is not the biggest Lamar Jackson defender I've ever seen. In fact, he is one of the bigger Lamar Jackson haters out there right now. He ended up putting out a top 10 list. I believe this was, I can't remember when. It was sometime last week, I believe. But he was left off completely, Lamar Jackson was, off Nick Wright's top 10 player list. But that's not even the most egregious thing here, because he was also left off of the players that just missed the top 10, the honorable mention. So Lamar Jackson not on Nick Wright's top 20 player list. I'll read it off here quickly in order. Patrick Mahomes, Trent Williams, Justin Jefferson, Myles Garrett, Joe Burrow, Christian McCaffrey, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, TJ Watt, Tyreek Hill, Josh Allen, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Bijan Robinson, Penei Sewell, Max Crosby, Micah Parsons, Fred Warner, Sauce Gardner, Kyle Hamilton. There are some names on here that are ridiculous to put over Lamar Jackson. Bijan Robinson has played one season. Wasn't even that great of a season, all things considered. I mean, these guys are great players. Like, Max Crosby's great. Sauce Gardner's great. I mean, these players are good. These players are all pros. They're future Hall of Famers, a lot of these guys. But to put all of these guys over Lamar, that's absurd. That's crazy. I'm supposed to talk here, and I'm at a loss for words. I am seriously at a loss for words here. Nick Wright said that always the MVP, people are going to ask me about this and talk about why is the MVP left off the list. Yeah, he said that, well, the MVP is skewed to a quarterback award, and that he believes these guys are better than Lamar Jackson. Like, we love Kyle Hamilton on this show, don't we? We love Kyle Hamilton. He's not better than Lamar Jackson. He's not. If the quarterback position also is an award, or not an award, but a position that I think does carry heavier weight. And he's still not on here. Where Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, all ahead of him. So again, that is blasphemy to me, and that is all I'll say about that. But let's get to more of a positive note, because we can talk about Julian Edelman said this, Nick Wright said this. Well, let's take the advice of two Hall of Fame quarterbacks, why don't we? Peyton Manning and Tom Brady at Fanatics Fest had high praise for Lamar Jackson, and these are the guys I'm going to listen to personally, because these guys know what they are talking about from a football perspective. Peyton Manning had Lamar Jackson on his top 5 quarterbacks list. Gave him a lot of praise. This is in no order, but Manning listed Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and said Lamar Jackson does things that just don't seem possible. And he says, I love the way Lamar carries himself. Talks a lot about how Lamar's gotten smarter with his body, can make plays with both his arm and with his legs. I mean, look, that's great praise from one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And it is true. Because he's able to go out there and do things that, you're like, the Houdini magic. And I think people who watch this team, cover this team, whatever it is, they watch them on a weekly basis. It's almost like we're becoming numb to the greatness because he does it so often. And so while fans of other teams sit there and watch and are like, what? That's crazy. How did he do that? I think we're just sitting there and we're like, oh, that's just Lamar. That's just what Lamar does. And that is unbelievable that we are almost like numb to greatness a little bit. I try to appreciate it all the time, and I certainly do, but he does it so often that you're just kind of like, oh, that's regular. It's awesome, but that's just regular Lamar Jackson. He's so good at what he does. And then Tom Brady also put him on his top 5 quarterbacks list alongside Mahomes. Rodgers, I think, was in there as the 5th guy, if I'm not mistaken. And then Burrow, Allen, and Lamar. Again, no order on those guys, but I'm going to listen to what Tom Brady and Peyton Manning have to say as opposed to Julian Edelman and Nick Wright. If we're pitting them up 2v2, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady against Julian Edelman and Nick Wright, put me over on Tom Brady and Peyton Manning's side. I think I'll favor those guys this time around, and every time around, if I'm being honest. That's all I have for you today, though, on Locked On Ravens. Really appreciate everybody tuning in today. Be sure to, again, like the video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and also follow along in video form, subscribe in audio form. We have a ton of content coming your way. Coming up tomorrow, more Ravens content, of course. Stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.